Hello you Bammots Bullsacks, Jim Sterling here, and this is Final Fantasy 15 at last. It's here at last, was once Final Fantasy 13 Versus, and is now finally here in the world's grasp as Final Fantasy 15. This is some footage I recorded off my PS4 earlier today. I'm not particularly far into the game yet, but I kind of had to get a video up pretty soon because I published a video that wasn't Final Fantasy 15 this morning, and everyone was all, where's your Final Fantasy 15 video? So here it is. Really early days with it. I'm juggling this and a game about a feathery dog and a game about Christmas, not to be too specific. And so I've got a lot on my plate right now, and two of the games of the three kind of take priority because their publishers gave me a good lead time with it, and Square Enix didn't. So as far as an actual finished written review of this goes, either I'm going to farm it out to someone else to do to save me the time, or it's going to take a while. And by a while I mean a fucking while. So until then, we've got just some footage of me getting into a fight against birds that are way too high a level for me. But I do get out of it, so that's good. As we can see here with the combat, sometimes it's fucking incomprehensible. The camera can do that sometimes, like it did there. The warping's fun. The combat itself is, I find it more involving and more engrossing than, at least in this early stage. I'll say this, within 10 minutes of playing this, I felt more absorbed in the combat than I did within the entirety of Final Fantasy 13's. And speaking as someone who, I guess, was one of the more notorious critics of Final Fantasy 13 back in the day, I like this one so far. I think it's safe to say that thus far, and that could change, you know, it's a long game, thus far I am enjoying it. It's bright and cheerful, and obviously there's going to be some serious stakes later on, I'm sure. I mean, the game teases at some pretty, miserable things happening later, but thus far it's not all man. Like, I thought Noctis would be a miserable fucking prick, but I mean, he's moody, but he's not like proper po-faced. And his friends are fun, all of his beautiful friends, his beautiful boys. They're all such handsome lads, and that's interesting. It is. I think it's the first time we've had a boy band as a protagonist in a Final Fantasy game. And that's that. I know there's some controversy over, having a party of all boys, which is unusual for Final Fantasy. It did have a party of all girls once with Final Fantasy X-2, that one, which I got stuck in when I tried to play it way back in the day. Ended up in a dungeon where I was saved in the dungeon, and there was a boss in it. He was too high a level, but there was nothing in there I could grind with to level up. So that's where I stopped playing 10-2. Anyway, this is a good fight because it shows off not my skills, which are pants at this point. Like, this is me just starting and still trying to get to grips with just the sheer amount of visual chaos on screen. It's but it is a good fight in that it shows what happens when you are near death, stumbling about like this, and one of your beautiful friends will help you. Sorry for that little spluttery, choky noise I made a moment ago. Very much over that illness I had last week, but there's still stuff like persisting inside in the lung area. It's not, whatever it was we got, it was bad, and it's going round. Like, apparently everyone in the local gaming store was sick with something, and a friend of mine, her boyfriend, is proper sick of something. So Mississippi right now, war zone of disease. I should have said something else instead of war zone, like quarantine zone or just plague realm or some. Mississippi's a shithole. Don't come. Don't come. Sorry, just finishing off a little bit of water there while I talk. So yeah, not very far in the game so far. And as I say, right now I've got a couple of other games on the go. So I may do another video, I guess, as a tide over when I'm further in, much further in. But like I say, I don't know quite when that is. I have a feeling that I won't be able to fully commit to this game until next Monday, because that's when I should be done with the other stuff. So it's going to be a bit of a wait until then, and we'll see where we go from there. But like I said, so far, there's going to be an awkward cut there, because whatever was in my lungs just had to come up while I was in the middle of a fucking recording. So if there's an awkward audio bit here, I apologise for that. Anyway, here are some beautiful boys setting up a tent and a barbecue. I don't know where they were carrying all this equipment. They are very far from their car at this point in the game, and yet they have all this shit. You can set up little campfires in the world, and I thought it was just, we'll set up a little campfire, but no, full barbecue, full dinner that you can pick and choose, which is interesting. That's one thing I've been enjoying about the game so far, is it's full of little things, weird little things, like this, for instance. Healing is not a big deal in this game. You can use items in battle, but out of battle, everything comes back. So the use of camping like this, finding a safe haven and camping up, is not to replenish stuff, but to boost stats. And this bit's fun because we get to hear the Final Fantasy victory theme, and that's a laugh. Because of the way the combat works in this one, somewhat MMO-ish, I guess, would be a fair way of putting it. You don't get the victory theme, so they look for ways to do it. I know one of the characters actually sort of does it with his mouth when he, as a random sort of response at the end of a fight. So this is the first, I guess, sort of boss-ish thing, although it's more of a tutorial than a real boss. But it's a fun little fight. It's a lot easier to get to grips with the combat system when it's you against a big thing like this. When it's lots of little enemies all over the place, and you're trying to anticipate when to hold down the dodge button, and you're trying to do a bunch of other stuff all at once, and the camera's behind a bit of grass, it can be difficult. But this is easier to understand. This is my first time using the techniques of Franz. You got to nail, there's a circle button prompt that I don't nail, I think, once in this fight, but I've gotten used to it now, but for this fight I was still kind of ambushed by it. But lots of little things just to make the combat feel more involved, which again was one of the issues I had with 13. There was all that paradigm shift stuff, if I remember correctly. Like I said, I haven't played it since it first came out, but I remember just not feeling particularly included in any aspect of the game. I kept feeling like the game's world, combat, just everything about it, its lore, its characters, they were all involved in a conversation that I was begrudgingly invited to eavesdrop on. Never felt like I was part of it.
Good luck, boys.
So, in this game, I guess there's a little tiny bit of that, just a tiny bit of that. Mostly because a lot of the lore is in an optional tutorial. And there's bits of this that are just confusing me, that maybe is in that lore that I haven't properly read yet. Like why a prince, because Noctis is a prince, why he's on a very important diplomatic mission just with 3 blokes in a car rather than an armed retinue of guards and everything. That seems to me unusual. But then a lot about this world is unusual. The game starts with a goddamn cover of Stand By Me, which I found bizarre in how normal it was, because this is Final Fantasy, a world of airships and giant chickens and things like that. And to have a game start with you and your 3 beautiful friends pushing a car, a very normal looking car, down, what could be any road in Nevada, with a cover of Stand By Me playing before the Final Fantasy logo comes up. It's bizarre in its mundanity, because that's like almost like real normal life, with normal real people with normal real behaviour, which is so unlike what you normally see in Final Fantasy with all its weirdness and stupidity. I say all this affectionately, by the way. I think some people think I just, I hate Final Fantasy, but I actually have a deep fondness for the series, as anyone who's heard me rant about Final Fantasy IX would be able to tell you. But there is just something so normal-ish about this game's world. It's ever so slightly off, and the fact it's full of monsters is obviously a big difference between this world and ours. Although, is it? Huh? That was a satirical point. Just apply whatever your definition of a human monster is for that bit. Anyway, we're going to go fight some goblins here. That was a mission. Lots of little side missions, lots of optional objectives. There are these series of hunting missions and little side quests as well as the main quest. And like I said earlier, just little random touches that make this game so much more instantly appealing than the last main non-MMO entry.
You need to take better care of yourself.
What was I going to say? Oh yeah, I was going to talk about the radio. You can buy soundtracks for the car, so you can listen to music while you drive to places, and you can buy, whole soundtracks from previous Final Fantasy games. Like, just at this early stage, I've got Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy VIII, and you just listen to them in the in-game car, which is fun. There's lots of little things like that that are making this game really stand out to me. And really, I was just going to play it for like a quick half hour in between the other stuff, but I spent considerably longer than I intended to today with it, which is always a good sign. I don't know what I was doing there. I have no idea. I was just kind of warping up and down and all and sundry there. But again, it gets to show off what happens when you fuck up, like I just did. You go into stasis, which means basically that you're shithouse for a while because your MP's low. At this point, again, because I was in a rush and didn't finish the tutorial, the optional tutorial, and because the game had told me everything else, like even without the tutorial, it was still throwing pop-up boxes explaining everything. It didn't tell me how to use items. And so I didn't. You hold the right trigger and you can bring the items up, but I didn't know that, and at this point was not curious enough to try. But I'd have probably had an easier time if I had bothered to do that, but I didn't. So instead I'm just fighting these goblins and wobbling about all stasis-like. So that's good. I like the enemy design though. These are some cool goblins. They look fun. Really nice enemy designs actually so far in the game. They kind of really stand out, which again is a difference between this and my last main Final Fantasy experience. Barring remakes and things. I think the last main thing I played was Final Fantasy X Remaster. That was a fun game. That was a game I enjoyed a lot more back in the day than I thought I did when I played it. Looking back on it, I had a way better time with it than I believed I did, which is a weird situation. Hard to explain. But anyway, just to give you another sort of idea of what the game's like, I saw these arcade cabinets and I thought, well, I wonder if I can play on that. And yes you can. You can play Justice Monsters 5. And that's just a whole thing the game has on top of everything else. I mean, the other games have had mini-games and stuff, but to just have this casually in a cafe, I thought was good. And because I want to make this 15 minutes exactly, I'm going to stop.